The heart of a father is the masterpiece of nature. Abbe Prévost, French priest, author, and novelist. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Today is another episode of Dad Talk. Now, what happens on Dad Talk? Well, that's my series to bring on everyday dads, and we talk about what is important to them. It doesn't matter what it is. Like if it's important to a dad, then it's important, and we talk about it. And if you're just a regular dad, just a guy that gets up, puts his pants on, his shoes on, his shirt on, goes to work, you are important and you can be on the show too. Just let me know. I'll bring you on. We'll talk about what's important to you. The goal of Dad Talk is to raise dad voices. The only ask that I have is that whatever we talk about is just related to raising your kids, whether it's things that you want to teach them, lessons of life, or whether maybe you're a mechanic and you like teaching your child about, auto mechanics. Whatever the case is, come on the show. We'll talk about it. Today, Joshua Krakow, hopefully I got that correct, joins me in this episode to discuss public schools and their alternatives. Please welcome Joshua.
Good
Joshua, how
morning.
are you, sir?
Good
Did I
morning.
did I get the last name right at least?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was like kind of nervous because I was like, "Oh crap, I forgot to ask ahead of time."
Yeah. No, it's Krakow.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome. All right, sir. So tell me about you as a dad.
Well, I got a 6-year-old daughter who just started kindergarten this year, and it's interesting trying to get involved in the PTA and get involved in my daughter's school and understand everything that's going on. So, yeah. Um, yeah.
So it's funny. There's a I can't remember the acronym. My wife found them. The school they don't have PTA. They have something else. It's some group.
PTO,
Is it
Parent
PTO?
Teacher Organization, is what they call it down here.
No, I think it was some other. I don't think he even had a P in there. It was something I've never even heard of it. I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank on it at the moment. But at any rate, um, so there is one, and I haven't gotten involved yet. But you have like, what's the interesting thing when you say getting involved in the PTA or
Uh,
PTO or whatever?
So we're just now into like the second week of school.
Mhm.
So I did like the open house and I'm trying to learn more and more about what's going on. I'm in our local politics.
Okay.
So I've already spoken with the school board a few times and brought up some things that I think could definitely help our school district. Um, but I've what's it called? I just feel like there's not enough of a support with the parents and the schools, and we need to actually have more of a conversation. There's not a whole lot of relaying what the parents actually think to the school board,
Okay.
and I feel like from the outside looking in, I get a good perspective. But also, I feel like going into the schools and working with the parents that are extremely active, getting
Mhm.
their perspective and actually advocating for them can help give me a broader perspective and fix some of the problems that we have because there are
Gotcha.
many.
Okay. And so don't mind me asking, my son goes to a charter school. Is your child going to like a public school as well?
Yeah, she's in a kindergarten right now,
Gotcha.
elementary.
Okay. And so what are some of the because look, I mean, we're both libertarians, and as a rule of thumb, I think a lot of people just automatically assume that libertarian, you're going to be homeschooling your child. So, what were the reasons that you chose to go to regular school or public school rather than homeschool?
Um, it is actually not a choice. I would
Okay.
absolutely unschool and have my own homeschool program, finding education catered towards my daughter's interests. so that way she retains what she's learning.
Mhm.
I think that that's how we should be raising our kids. Um, Unfortunately, I'm in a split home, so I have been forced to put her into the school that she's in, and I really don't get much of a say. I've been literally second class citizen.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
And I think that the situation is different for everyone. I know in our family, I was kind of like, yeah, we should probably homeschool. And then my wife, who is not a libertarian, asked me one question. And she didn't do it on purpose, but she basically killed the whole idea with one question. And she was like, okay, I get it. Homeschooling, he's only going to be doing about an hour, maybe 2 hours of work a day. What's he going to do the rest of the time? And that was a big question for us because I work from home, which means I still have to work. And he doesn't have any siblings. And so, you're like, hey, go play with your toys for a little bit. And so he might play with his toys for about an hour. And then he comes out and he's like, all right, what are we gonna do next? It's like, well, we aren't gonna do anything because I have to work. And and we noticed over summer it was actually a bit of a struggle because if we took him somewhere, play dates, even to Chick-fil-A to play, like, that meant we had to leave. And, like, Chick-fil-A maybe not is the best answer because or example, because, I can actually take my laptop, and so I can actually work there while he's playing with other kids and getting some enjoyment. But for the most part, if we like, there was only so much for him to do at the house before he got bored. And then he just really craves being with other people. So I was like, well, I don't think this is going to work because I can't leave the house consistently like that to give him the attention that he needs. Which I know sounds like a babysitter, but it's not really. It's just like trying to make sure that he has enough interaction with other people throughout the day. So, and
Yeah.
then also we can both work. So, because we both work from home, but we still have to work and things have to get done. So that was the reason for us. But what are some of the problems that you're seeing down where you are?
Well, I live in a split home, so there's simple things like I hate that we are paying for free breakfast and free lunch.
Hmm.
So my daughter doesn't want to eat the breakfast that I want to provide for her that's full of nutrition. She
Hmm.
wants to wait until she gets the crap that they're feeding at our schools for free. There's no ability to say, hey, I don't want my kid to do this.
Oh, really?
Same thing with the lunches as well. So I've literally lost my control over my daughter's diet when she's in my home because the school is the governing body.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that because that's not where we are. We don't have that issue, or at least I don't know about. Maybe it's because it's a charter school and it's a little different. Maybe the regular public school. I'm not really sure. But we didn't sign up for it, and he has breakfast before he goes, and then he takes a lunch as well. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, have you interfaced with other parents yet?
Not so much. It's so secluded. Once you get into kindergarten and up, they've
Hmm.
really removed the parents. They want to get your kid out of the car and start taking control.
Gotcha.
It's really interesting how removed parents are once they actually start to get in the public education system in the idea of safety for the
Gotcha.
kids. Yeah.
Okay. And so what are so kind of like when you say so we decided we want to talk about like public school and alternatives. What are some of those alternatives that you wanted to discuss?
Well, I think that there's been the idea of pod classes, and I know that some areas have done pod classes.
Hmm.
I've talked to some teachers in this area and some professionals that have ran for school board. And what I've heard is like the biggest problem is allowing teachers to uh, or to be like a homeschool teacher is in a
Hmm.
sense. We have a great program down in Naples, Florida, called the Freedom Institute, and they're in high school only, but
Hmm.
they're working on developing into Lee County, and they're really cool in the fact that they are a homeschooling facility. We have the Step Up program, where a portion of your taxes can go towards charter or private or homeschooling.
Hmm.
Uh, so what they do is they have a homeschooling facility and their curriculum is designed so if your child's behind, they on a certain subject and they're thriving at certain others, they want to obviously work on the things that they're behind on, but they actually want to put more of an attention on the things that your kid is thriving at because that's more likely what they're going to succeed at in life.
Mhm.
Um, and then because they are a homeschooling facility, if your kid doesn't want to be there, they can do all the homeschooling stuff online and you don't have to give that money to the school. So they're really incentivized to make sure that the education is engaging and interactive to the point that the kid wants to show up. You can show up for one classroom, math or reading, or you can
Mhm.
come up for the full gambit. And they want to make every class engaging to the point that they want to be there. And I think that that's really what we need to do is we need to get to the point where we have these conversations with our teachers directly. You don't have to go through the school board or the school or the department head. You need to be able to have the conversation with the teachers, and the
Mhm.
teachers need to be able to have more control over their classrooms, and they just get shoved kids and deal with it. And same thing with the parents. You don't like the teacher, well, we can get you on a list, but deal with it.
Right. Well, tell me if you think this is, like, incorrect. It seems to me that there's a little flexibility, I guess, when they're younger, I think, or do you see it? 'Cause my son's in kindergarten, so I don't know, and it just seems to me that at this age, um, some of these issues aren't nearly as big of an issue as they might be when they get into, like, junior high, excuse me, or high school. Do you feel the same way about that, or do you think that they're actually even at this age are significant issues that are going to be obstructive to like what you might consider a proper education?
Well, in my where my daughter goes to school, the region that my daughter's in,
Mhm.
1 in 4 of our kids are English learners.
Okay.
So, just in that alone, I mean, we almost need to make a individual classroom for Spanish learners. Now, I'm not for segregation by any means, but I do think that there is a issue where you're trying to learn and the rest of the kids are now trying to learn the language that you're speaking.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that that is definitely putting my daughter back. We were in pre-K and we're back on learning colors again, where she learned that last year. So it's very disheartening. Um, and yeah, so I think that there's a lot of setbacks potentially in public school that delay the learning process,
Right.
especially at the younger ages, because that's when they're really getting the most developed. And they also are throwing these tablets in kids' hands.
Hmm.
In every kindergartner in Lee County Public Schools gets a tablet. It's
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, just misappropriation of funds.
Wow. Yeah, we didn't get any tablet. My son still, like, when he wants to watch some YouTube videos occasionally, he has to play with the 10-year-old tablet that we have.
Yeah.
That's what he gets when it's, TV when it's screen time. So, it's interesting talking about the weight, 'cause I don't think that, we have a different demographic up here, and so we don't have the 1 in 4. But it's interesting just hearing about it because it seems to me that one of the big drawbacks of public school is that they're dealing with so many kids in such large numbers that what they end up doing is it's like they're trying to teach to the group, and I don't want to sound negative, but like whoever's the how do you say it? Um, those who are in most need, right? So that's the level that they're at. And rather than saying, "All right, we're at this level and you need to keep up," it's more like, "Okay, well, we would like to be at this level, but we've got certain students in here, maybe English is their second language, and so they're not going to do as well because they're still learning the language. So,
Mm.
so we'll just dial it down a little bit in order to ensure that everybody gets a fair education, right? But fair in that particular sense just means somebody that's not left behind because that's an easy to measure, but you can't really measure somebody that's not going as far as they should be,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the big problem. I mean, one of the big problems. I mean, there are obviously other problems with public schools in general, But that's one of the big problems when it comes to academics, I think, is that everybody is kind of stunted a little bit, based on what's going on in that particular school. So,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
the plan is then for you to get involved in, like, the PTO, and what is what is your aim in doing that? Just trying to be participating and knowing what's going on and having some influence, or, like, what are some of the things that you're hoping to do this year during, while participating in the PTO?
Well, I'm also running for state house down in this area.
Mhm,
So I'm currently working on writing my own bills and trying to figure out the most important policies and how we can advocate best. My campaign is all about the family. Uh,
mhm.
so the schools and fixing our schools is definitely a big priority. So just getting that different perspective. Um, and being able to understand, not from just looking from the outside in. I want to be able to just understand the minutia. I have friends that are teachers, and I've actually worked with a couple of school board candidates that ran this year in the primaries, and just getting all the different perspectives so that way I can really uh, understand the complexities of the political aspect. And as I've talked to a lot of these PTO uh, parents, it's interesting because so many of them are excited that I'm involved or that I'm wanting to get involved, um, because they don't really advocate for themselves.
Right.
They typically, oh, we used to have a woman a few years ago that did that and actually went to the school board, but
Mhm.
nobody actually, a lot of people want to help and they want to see the change and they're even volunteering, but unfortunately a lot of the change is at the top and the top doesn't really listen, and a lot of people are afraid of the level of authority that the bureaucracy of the school boards have.
Gotcha. So we'll have to touch base, as because obviously school just started, so
Yeah.
you probably don't have too many stories just yet to tell. But eventually you will. We'll have to have you back on and talk about, kind of what was your experience with the PTO. I know that I told my wife, I was like, all right, well, I wish I could remember the group name, but nonetheless, I told her, I was like, let me know if there's any men that are involved. 'Cause otherwise, I don't know if I really wanna, be the only guy in a bunch of women, because that's my experience growing up, is that PTO is basically what the housewives did. I know that's not probably true now, but,
It still is.
oh, is it? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that tends to be the dynamic, I think. I think moms tend to get a little bit more involved, as a rule of thumb, and then, dads get involved in the sports, if we're kinda separating things by, generalizations and whatnot. So dads get involved with the sports, moms get involved with the PTO. There's obviously overlap. So don't anybody skewer me and come after me and be like, I'm a dad and I'm involved in my PTO. Like, I get it. I know there are some dads, and maybe I will too. We'll see. My wife's, she can handle things. So, if she sees something that she doesn't like, she'll definitely speak up. So no worries there. So like, what are some of the, like, have you well, it's probably too early yet to, because school just started, but have you
Yeah.
started looking at some of the homework and stuff like that? Like, there's a lot we have to log in, and there's, like, a whole bunch of, like, once you log into this system, there's, like, a whole bunch of links and clicks and all this stuff, and I was like, "Holy wow," like, that's almost feels like the schooling is online, but I think it's just their homework.
Yeah, no, so far she hasn't had any homework.
Mhm.
Um, I'm still working on getting my rights in the school.
Okay.
I had to give the court papers to show that I was my daughter's father to pick her up and the first day of school. So it's like it's always fun trying to get the same rights that you would be otherwise, and jumping through all the hoops because you're not the primary parent. Um,
Gotcha.
so I'm still going through a lot of that of just being able to get on the portal and get the contacts and be able to see a lot of that. So I've more or less been conversating through the uh, through the pack that they do through her backpack. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And so let me I sorry, I don't mean to draw a blank on you here. I'm just trying to think of like the next question or like area of conversation that we can go. Is there something that let me be a little bit more generic and throw it on you. Is there something specific that you really want to like get out and talk about as far as being a dad, and that maybe I'm missing or something like that?
Daddy,
Okay.
Hey.
Go.
I need to
Hold on one.
do number was it off.
Okay. Go. Sorry.
Oh, no, no, no complaint. Look, my little one is off to school now, so he's not jumping
Yeah.
in on the podcast, but he used to make regular appearances because I would have my show at 7, and he would sometimes wake up and you'd see him kind of like walk by, behind me, and sometimes he would come right up, and then just kind of give me a hug or whatever. But now he has to be at school. We leave about 7:30, or his mommy takes him about 7:30. And so I start this podcast about 7:30. So now, unfortunately, folks, you probably aren't going to get to see my producer very often anymore. So that's just the way it goes. But yeah, he's it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So no worries if your child jumps in on on the stream. So, but anyway, so what I was trying to ask you, and guess I was drawing a little bit of a blank, is like, what are some of the things that you're passionate about? Whether it's related to the schooling or not. What are some of the things that just kind of really wake you up in the morning, other than like, Daddy, I need some breakfast.
Yeah. Well, I also have a nonprofit in the area for single
Hmm.
dads. So I'm really also being a part of the PTO. I feel like it's my duty to get more involved and be as active as possible. So that way I can reach out to dads that are single dads and
Hmm.
be able to get in contact with them, because there's such a divide in like structure. There's like mom workout groups and
Hmm.
mom hangouts and whatever, so that way they can network. So I'm trying to do the same with dads, but there's not a whole, because there's not any real group. So I'm working with that. And then what was I gonna say? And I think that we really do need a lot of guys' perspectives in our schools. I think that we've really kind of uh, had just the perspective of moms, and
Hmm.
they've really catered a lot of our education system. And I want to kind of be a leader in the fact of we need more men involved in our children's life, uh, and every aspect of it, especially in their education, because it's so important to them and their safety and futures.
You know, that's exciting to hear because let me give you a little backstory. Years and years ago, I was involved in the church, and I remember reading this book called "Why Men Hate Going to Church." And this book basically said that church had been feminized, and if it got feminized to a certain point, then the church basically dies. And so that doesn't seem to have any relevance in school, except for um, one of the points that it made in the book was when you walk into a church, you can see feminine artifacts that would normally be chosen by women, right? You might go in and see like flowers on the wall or something like that, like a picture of flowers, or, like the things in there were designed and laid out and look and feel like it was, made for women by women. And I feel similar when it comes to school, kind of like you. I think that more men need to get involved in the education process. So, for instance, I would be willing to bet that if there were more men involved in the education process, we would not be having the debate about whether or not teachers should be permitted to be armed. Now, I know people don't like talking about that. It makes them feel uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, the way I look at it, I say, if this teacher is going to throw themselves in front of my child, which many of them do when these kind of horrible incidents happen, then maybe we should permit them to be armed and defend themselves to the fullest, so that they not only can defend our kids, which they're going to do anyway, but maybe they can walk away from it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like these are the kind of things that don't happen primarily because we don't have nearly enough dads involved. And I mean, if you think about it, you've got Moms for Liberty. What's that? That's a moms group that initially started to because they didn't like things that were going on in the public school. You've got their counterparts, kind of, Moms Demand. Those are the anti-gun moms, right? But you don't have any dad groups. And I'm telling you, you start a dad group. I would, I don't know if I mean, obviously can't join from where you are and where we are, but I'd be willing to, at least try to maybe help it grow up here as well. Because I think you are right. Men need to be more involved because their voices are important. And then you said also just like some generic men's group, or like in general.
So yeah, I have a nonprofit for single dads, singledadsoutreach.org.
Okay.
But we're working on peer-to-peer counseling. I'm the active dads administrator, and
Okay.
just hearing other people's story can definitely help them feel better and make their perspective on the situation so much greater. Just being able to share their story, but I do try to help share share other perspectives. That way, they realize that they're not alone. Going through the family core system, I realized how you just kind of get alienated from a lot of your friends and a lot of society because you're in this depression, and a lot of people around you may not be going through what you're going through. And there's a lot of, I think that there's a huge growth when you get into the peer-to-peer aspect rather than, hey, we're going to get a psychologist and they're going to give you their opinion, but not
Mhm.
necessarily is there an empathy aspect. um, and I want to actually eventually take over playgrounds. I want to do playground takeovers. Right now
Okay.
we do playground meetups, but like you said, I don't think that their fathers are involved in their children's lives as much, and we don't know what to do with our kids.
Hmm.
Um, so a lot of the times when you go to the park, you'll see a mom with a bunch of moms sitting around or playing with their kids, and you don't really see fathers. You see some dads, married couples there together, but you
Hmm.
don't see a lot of single dads. And I want to end up changing uh, that polarization and just be like, holy cow, what is going on? Because people just aren't used to seeing dads spending time with their kids as much. So
Right.
I'm really working on trying to get that networking aspect. And then we also are working on getting a grant to start working in the prisons.
Mhm.
We want to work on recidivism uh, and set proper expectations for the dads getting out of prison, and help build the bonds with their families. So that way, when they get out, hopefully they don't reoffend because they understand that it's going to remove them from their home. And we really just want to try and help build these families because we have such a broken society, and it's not going to get any better with broken homes. We need
Mhm.
to start fixing a lot of these broken homes so that way we can get to the crux of the problem, or that is the crux of the problem. And then we can work our way out into the community is our hope.
Abs-
So
Absolutely. I no disagreement. I think I'm looking at your site here and just kind of checking out. So I'm trying to do a couple things at once here. But Single Dads Outreach, I put it up on the screen, folks. Go check it out, singledadsoutreach.org. And then yeah, I'm definitely going to have you come back on, in a few months and just kind of see, get an update and see like, okay, how is PTO going? How is Single Dads Outreach going? How many playgrounds have you taken over? In a sense. But I agree. And this is the reason that I do this show, is just to bring on dads and talk about what's important to them. And maybe they've got some grand ideas, like I've got, a nonprofit and I'm trying to start these groups. I'm trying to get dads involved and go out to the prisons and, so on and so forth. Maybe they've got some grand things that they're doing, or maybe they're just a regular guy that isn't doing any of those things, but just, wants to talk about being a dad, because I feel like getting dads involved in society more is our answer. That's our answer to a lot of social ills, is just to get the dad involved, plain and simple. right? And one thing we have to do is we have to learn to respect the dads. That doesn't mean that we're always right, although we usually are, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, but what that means is like making sure that we have a high respect for dads, but then high expectations as well at the same
Mhm.
time. So I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna just say, oh, think of all dads is all great. No, dads have to actually be great. And many of them are. I mean, many of them they maybe need a little bit of an assistance, right? Kind of little bit of improvement, but dads are important. That's what I appreciate everything that you're doing. I think this is absolutely wonderful. I definitely want to hear back about, I'll be checking out your site as well. So man, you are doing a lot. How do you do all this? Do you sleep?
So what got me into this? I'm actually disabled from a
Mhm.
motorcycle accident. I
Mm.
lost my leg in it, and I decided to get a structured settlement. And going through the family court system and seeing all the problems, it made me want to get involved. Um, I downsized my life. I used to have a 4-bedroom house. Now I moved into a 2-bedroom house.
Mhm.
Um, and I now manage the 4-bedroom house as a rental property. So I do a lot of this stuff from home, and I'm technically unemployed, but I live off of my structured settlement because I think that it's something so important that I'll put my life on hold financially, because the impact that it's made on my life, I know that it's not just my life, and if the system doesn't change, it's going to continuously impact a lot of people's lives,
Mhm.
and it majorly impacted my daughter's life as well, and it was extremely traumatic for her. So I think that we really need to fix a lot of the problems in our family court system, and um, in our schools, and just having, like you said, we need fathers involved. We need to I One of the bills that I have written is, I have a bill written to give fathers the right, the moment that DNA is determined,
Mhm.
remove the authority from the judges and psychologists, and if there's a harm to the child, we have DCF, and
Okay.
that is the criminal entity. Family court is a civil entity, but unfortunately, we have what's called silver bullets, which are false accusations. Um, and then those false accusations are adjudicated like they're criminal in the civil side of the family court system, where it should be criminal. And there's a divide in that. I work with the National Parenting Organization, and we're actually working on 787.03, which is parental alienation, abduction, and kidnapping.
Okay.
So we're trying to create a training program for the Fraternal Brotherhood of Law Enforcement and the Sheriff's Association, and trying to that into our education system, or into their training, because a lot of the times law enforcement have improper training, or they lack the training
Mhm.
about laws. Lawyers go to law school for years and years, and they pick a focus because law is expansive.
Mhm.
Um, so we are hopefully prioritizing 787.03, so that way we can fix a lot of these family court issues as well.
Gotcha. And so, let's back up a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
The bill that you wrote, you said it does what again upon determining DNA?
So I want to give fathers equal rights the moment that DNA is determined,
Oh,
ultimately giving both parents 50-50 custody, and putting the onus on both parents to work things out together until they can figure out mediation program, whether it's public or private, where
mhm,
you can start scheduling and saying, hey, this is a schedule that works for me, or this doesn't, and you can get into that negotiation. But I think that we really can remove a lot of the bureaucracy in our family court system. 40% of our court files are family law related, so it's a major burden on our tax funds as well, and the court's ability to deal with problems in general. um,
gotcha.
so yeah, it's a big problem to
So,
tackle.
so what kind of problems, like, just kind of give me an example of a few things that this bill would, I guess, prevent? Because it sounds, if I understand it correctly, you're saying that you've got a bill that you want to present, and what this bill will do is once DNA has been established, which the DNA result has been established, and we know that yes, the man is the dad, he gets automatically there's this 50% authority or what have you that's kind of given. Like, okay, you're now you're half of the parents, and so you get these certain privileges. So then what? How does it handle when there or so the first question is what kind of situations might be mitigated or not need to come to the court under your bill, I guess?
So there's actually, I just shared with you a link about a father that I'm in contact with. Uh, Very, very, very sad story, and I hope to continuously advocate for him. But Brandon Martellez is out of Tampa, and his daughter, the day before his daughter was born, he messaged the mother,
Mhm.
"Hey, I know we're not together, but I want to be there for my daughter's birth. I'll wait in the parking lot. Please just let me know." 4 days later, he didn't get a response, and she responded saying, "Sorry, your daughter died due to sudden infant death syndrome." As a responsible father, he was prepared. He had a nursery, he had crib. He just wanted to be active and be the best father that he could, and be as prepared as possible. And with that, he was crushed at that news and wanted closure. Um, and he ended up going to the hospital. It was due to HIPAA laws. He could not find any information about his daughter's his daughter's birth. So he contacted DCF. DCF then got involved and helped him find his daughter. Come to find out, she did not die. It was a lie. The mother actually sold the child to an adoption agency that I continuously hear is very common in Tampa, Florida, of an adoption agency that really focuses on lower socioeconomic mothers that are going through hard times, and
Mhm.
they offer to pay their bills and help them with resources, and they ultimately take the kids. And unfortunately, not knowing the system, Brandon ended up getting a DNA test himself. He ended
Mhm.
up having the Department of Revenue get involved, and they gave him a DNA test through their own entities. Both of them came back to being his daughter.
Okay.
And unfortunately, he didn't know that he had to, or he didn't understand that he had to pay the adoptive parents for the care that they were providing until the courts could get involved.
Wow.
And because he didn't, he literally had his child taken from him. He has never met his daughter. The judge, I guess, broke down crying, saying, "I'm so sorry. I wish that there was something I could do, but because you weren't on the father registry and this process has gone on so long already, sorry. The child's integrated and it's in the child's best interest to not remove the child from the home." And I hope to be able to prevent situations like that. Um, there's many stories where you just have the family court system just not giving parents rights. There was another story um,
So
where a gentleman,
before you go to that
yeah,
story, let's tap onto this because I'm skimming through the article that you sent me, and it says Martillez, I think is how you say his name, was
yeah,
not listed on the putative father registry, which quote permits a man alleging to be the unmarried biological father of a child to preserve his right to notice and consent in the event of adoption. What is can you tell us about the putative father registry? Because I've never heard of this.
yeah, it's disgusting. So ultimately, if you potentially might be a father, you then have to give the state a DNA of yours. And if you want to contest that that might be your child, the state can come in and say, "Oh, well, now since it was proactive rather than reactive, now we can start giving you rights." But because you weren't there and because you didn't give the state your DNA, you now have to wait until the state ultimately gives you rights. it's not as simple as DNA. So, like for example, I met my daughter at 3 months old, and then it took me 10 months to actually get into any kind of arrangement to see her,
Hmm.
uh, because the bureaucracy is so long. And in my circumstance, which I don't really want to get too deep into mine,
Sure, sure.
um, but with my circumstance, I I got temporary full custody overnight, and it was absolutely crazy uh, how the system works and how long it takes, and yeah,
So let
it
me make sure I understand this registry thing, how it works. Let's say I'm an unmarried man
yep.
and I sleep with a woman, she gets pregnant, and we're all excited about the baby, right? She decides that, she's going to keep it. So we don't have that issue. So we're going forward. Maybe we take some pictures of her, of her bump getting bigger and all that. And through that time, I believe that I'm the dad, but if I don't sign up on a registry because we're unmarried, if I don't sign up on this registry and give the state, the government, my DNA, then later, if at the last minute, yeah, after birth, she's like, "Well, I actually want to give the child up for adoption because I just realized I can't be a mom," whatever the case may be. So then she gets to give the child up for adoption, and then I come in and I say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I'm the dad. If that's gonna happen, then let me be the dad and have my child." And the government's like, "Yeah, sorry, you should have signed up on our website." I mean, not really, but
Yeah,
to be a little snarky about it. You should have signed up on our website, but since you didn't, you're just reacting now since you weren't proactive in this process. A process that, like me, who's been living in Florida for probably about 12 years now, I've never heard of. It
hmm
just so happens that I'm married, so it doesn't apply to me, but I've never heard of this, so I wouldn't have even known. But did I get that right?
absolutely. You are
Wow.
right on the point.
Wow, I'm gonna look into this a little bit more because I want to talk about this more later. Because that's wild. Okay, so you had another story that you were going to tell. I think you have a few more moments before you have to go, right?
Yeah. So there's also a story. Corey, I believe that the father's name is, and he's another Florida. Let me find that story real quick. Um, yeah. So here's another story that I'm sharing with you.
Hmm.
So this father ended up during COVID. He was engaged to this woman. They already had a prior child. I believe at the time his son was 5,
Hmm.
and she was pregnant. This is in 2020 or 2021. 2021.
Yep.
Uh,
Mhm.
but with that being said, we were in the height of COVID, and the mom had health conditions due to COVID, and they brought her back to the emergency C-section. And the father was at the hospital. There was no breakup. They were engaged. They were in love. I mean, everything. They were living their dream. Um, and she ended up having an emergency C-sections due to complications. He was not able to go back to the back, and unfortunately the mother went into a coma.
Mhm.
um and due to COVID, he had to choose: are you going to see your wife, or are you going to see your baby? And his daughter was born, and she had no complications. She was perfectly fine. So unfortunately he did have to choose one or the other, and
Mhm.
he stood by his wife's side as she unfortunately passed due to complications. She was and Her family started to get involved,
Mhm.
and I forget, I think it was 3 or 4 months that he said it took him to get rights to his daughter, because the grandparents then attested, well, since our daughter died, this is our grandkid. And
Mhm.
because, again, the father wasn't on the father registry, and because he was not able to sign the birth certificate because of the emergency C-section, and because
Right.
the mother was not able to acknowledge the father was the father to the medical professionals, he was treated like a second class citizen again.
Right.
And he ended up getting DNA tests, and there's the punitive father registry right there. But yeah, so with that being said, he was in a legal battle against the grandparents who were estranged. The grandparents wanted to adopt the child because also came with the resources that the mother and the father had collected in her accounts that would be tied with the child. Um, so with that being said, the father had to fight the grandparents, and it took him like 3 months, I believe. Uh, and it got to the point where DCF ended up starting to, or I think DCF contacted him, he said, and said, "Hey, we're gonna have to put your kid in foster care for the time being, just because we can't. It's a special situation where we have to decide parental rights or grandparents' rights, and the
Hmm.
courts haven't given you rights because, again, you're not on the registry and you're not on the birth certificate. So the default is to go to the family court system and have them figure out how to deal with that situation.
Right.
And it just is so bloated that it took him forever. And yeah, he eventually got his custody to his daughter, but it took months and months.
Hmm.
And she was literally just at the hospital alone with him visiting, but he couldn't take his daughter home and dealing with burying his wife. And I couldn't even imagine them telling you, hey, this is your kid. You were here, but she's staying here for months until we can figure out when you have rights.
Right.
It's just travesties.
It is, and it's interesting here. So in the article that you sent, um, it's quoting Cape Coral attorney Matthew Irwin. He's not connected to the case, but he's talking about it. And he says, believe it or not, even if he was on the birth certificate, if the mother were still alive, he would still have no custodial rights to the child, any child born outside of wedlock in the state of Florida. And so until his name goes on the birth certificate, at least his custodial rights are the same as mine, which is zero. So that's very interesting. So apparently, and I wasn't aware of this. So apparently in Florida, if you are not married, be very careful about having a child with somebody, because if you're a man, you have no rights. You have no custodial rights to that child. And if something happens, like in this particular case, the mother died, so she couldn't confirm or do anything, even though, like you said, they were still madly in love. They were planning to get married, planning to live a long life together, have this child together, raise the child together. Then she unfortunately dies. And the state says, well, you're not in our database, so you're not a real dad, which is insane because we have the technology now to get a DNA test and confirm that. And I would imagine it wouldn't take more than a week at most to get a DNA test. I would assume that they have some way to do this and verify relatively quickly and say, all right, hold on, champ. It's going to be, takes 2 weeks for this to go out to the lab, for them to do it and come back. And then in 2 weeks, if you're the dad, bam, it's, all is gonna be good. But that's not the system that we have, folks.
Yeah, in our law enforcement, I believe that we have the technology at our local law enforcement to process DNA within an hour.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
I'm not
but
familiar
the
with the
state
technology.
is with like weeks.
Right. And I know that I'm just saying, like, I don't know
Yeah,
the time frame, but it shouldn't be months. I know it's not
no,
months anymore. Um,
nope.
I got my ancestry DNA taken, and I'm pretty sure it was less than a month. I think it was just a couple of weeks from the time that I mailed it out to the time that I had my results back. So I know that we can do these things relatively quickly. So, all right. Let's I know we're gonna have to wrap it up. You got to get your little one to school. So
Yep.
any final words, Joshua, on anything that we've talked about, or just final words that you want to leave people with?
Um, I just think that we need to really focus on our kids. We need to stop looking at government and others to raise our children. We need to actually be active. I think that we need to. You were touching on time and being able to spend with them, and how you'd be able to cut out the time
Hmm.
and make sure that they're entertained. I personally think that we don't need to worry about entertaining our kids.
Hmm.
I deal with politics and stuff like that all the time. And I just went to the governor's summit in Orlando for Family Cafe.
Hmm.
I'm doing a lot of these different breakout sessions and learning about things. And I think that our kids really do need to get more involved with adults and understanding adult perspectives,
Mhm.
than really just putting them into classrooms and making sure that they're entertained. So I think that we need to start taking our kids and getting them more involved. I also would like to see whatever happened to take your child to work day. Like, it was only one day, but I feel like
Right.
nowadays our kids think that we go at home and we're playing video games all day or whatever, and we're not working. So I think it's very important for our kids to see what we do and
Right.
understand school may not be fun. Work isn't always fun. Sometimes we can have fun at work, but
Right.
work isn't always fun. And we're just doing the same struggle that you are. You're just at a different level. And again, we just need to get more involved in our kids and pass our morals on to them, because unfortunately, if we don't pass them on, the government will. And I don't like our government's morals.
Right. I hear you. I agree with you there. Real quick, a comment here from Julian says, I'd really say they should use the DNA to determine the paternal relationship then. I totally agree. I think when there's it shouldn't be difficult for a dad to have access to his child. We already don't make it difficult for a woman, a mom to have access to her child, and a dad should have the same ease of access. Now, I get it. If a woman's in the hospital and she's pregnant and she gives birth, they don't need a DNA test because they literally watched the baby come out of the woman. So they know this is your child. So I get that there are some, what would you call it? Physiological, markers that kind of help like, yes, this is the legitimate mother that we don't have necessarily with a father, but a DNA test, as Joshua just said, can be done within like a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And even
And I
if it
think
was
that
a week is much better than a couple of months.
Yeah, I think that it's also a 14th Amendment violation as well, the way that our family court system is currently structured. Because their biggest thing is do you have a house? Do you have a car? Do you have a job? How are you going to be able to provide for this child? Do you have a criminal history? These are all processes that you have to go through to get involved in your child's life through the family court system. Where a mother leaving the hospital, there is no, do you have a house? Do you have a car? Do you have a
Right.
job? Are you going to be able to, you could be homeless, you could be whatever. You could have just gotten out of jail yesterday, and they don't do any background checks. And I don't think that we should. I mean, I think that would be
Right.
tyrannical if the state said, Mom, you just got out of jail. Your child is in custody with us until we can make sure that you're not going to be a violent harm to your child. It's
Right.
like we need to get to the parents' rights and make them equal.
Yes. Totally agree.
Yeah.
100%. As a pastor of mine once said, like 20 years ago, we were talking about this very topic, and he said, "You basically," I'm paraphrasing. He said, "Basically, you have to prove that a mother is a crackhead before they're willing to take the child from her." And he goes, "But no such requirement is there for dads. It's actually much easier to take a child from their father." And I agree that we have a very imbalanced system that needs to find a balance because fathers are important, plain and
Absolutely.
simple. Absolutely 100% important. All right, Joshua, thank you so much for being on. I'm gonna put you backstage and I'll talk to you in just a minute, or if you need to go, that's fine too. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. I will definitely be looking to bring you back on in a few months, and we will talk about, kind of like what your experience has been in school, where things are, with your campaign, where things are with your nonprofit for single dads, and we'll just do a checkup and see how things are going, and you know ways that other men can get involved and can help out. So before I do that, I will say, let's go back here. Where is it? Here's his website. So KrakowForFloridaFamilies.com. If you're interested in his run for you're running for state house, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, for State House. And then if you're interested in his nonprofit, you can go here to singledadsoutreach.org. Check out either one or both of those and just, give him a little bit of support because it's very, very important. All right, Joshua, I'm going to put you backstage and close the show out. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. And last but not least, I want you to remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great weekend. Catch you next Monday. But for now,